Welcome everyone to this week's Food for Thought webinar. My name is Caroline Wirtz. I'm a professor of marketing at the business school, but for this talk, probably what's more relevant is that I'm also the Associate Dean for Entrepreneurship. And it is in that capacity that I met Mana a few years ago. So welcome to Mana Gritti, who has been our student. So Mana studied the BSc in Business Studies at the business school between 2013 and 2016, and then kind of entered all the entrepreneurship things that we offer at the school, and we'll talk about a little bit. So that's how our path have crossed. He's been super successful since, so it's always really nice to invite our alumni back to hear about their stories. So welcome. And just to give you a little bit of an overview of what we're doing in the next couple of weeks. So we have actually webinars scheduled already until the middle of October. So if you enjoy these, please keep coming back. Next week, we have a really interesting webinar from another of our alumni, actually, who is in a very senior position at LinkedIn, who will talk about networking online and networking during COVID-19. The week after that, we have a seminar by one of our colleagues from the finance faculty about maintaining and developing banking standards. And then on the 30th of September, we have a kind of really interesting sounding webinar with Josh Cohen, who is a very famous both professor of literary studies, but also a psychoanalyst. And we're going to talk about ambition, which we thought at the beginning of the new academic year would be interesting. Mana, welcome to Food for Thought.
Hey Caroline, thanks for having me.
So Mana is actually back in the office, right? In London.
Just made it back to London after 6 months away, and it's very good to be back in the big city and at the office with the team.
And the team is also fully back?
The team is not fully back. We're spread between Spain, obviously the countryside in England, Italy, France, so it's quite exciting, and we've been remote since March, fully remote. So that was a big challenge for us, but now we're happy to slowly have the people come back to the office.
Great. So for the ones who want to ask questions, we have the chat function obviously, but I won't be looking at that. So if you actually want to ask Mana something, please use the Q&A function, because that will be a bit easier for me to see. So, Mana, why don't you start at the beginning, very briefly? You have this amazing business called Bombinate, which if anybody here has not looked at it yet, you should, but it comes with a health warning, because once you start looking at it, you kind of become addicted to the great stuff that they have. So how did that all start? Because you were actually at uni, right, with us while this all started.
Yes, so it's a very long story, one that potentially deserves a coffee and a lunch, but the short story, let's say, is that me and 3 of my best friends in the summer after second year at the business school decided to take up on an adventure. And basically what we did is we raised some money for charity, found some sponsors, and then embarked on a road trip that spanned from Switzerland all the way to Mongolia. So it was 20,000 kilometers across the Silk Road, going through countries such as Iran, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, you name it. Really, the kind of countries that nobody goes to, but that are essentially the birthplace of society and the center of the Silk Road. And so it's during that long trip that one of my best friends and myself had this conversation about craft, about quality, about the beautiful products we had seen on the road, and it's true that during that conversation we thought about our access to quality, to craftsmanship, to the brands that we thought would match our aspirations in life as well, and what we had access to back in Europe. And when you think about the high street in Europe, it's true that from Milan to London to Paris, the high street is very sterile, and it has shown, especially with COVID, where you see all these shops that are empty and that don't seem very appealing, don't represent basically this new generation that we were at the time. So we came back to Europe after that big trip and decided to research this a bit more. And so we met a lot of great craftsmanship brands, how we call them. So these are small independent brands, not the traditional sense of a brand, but really, DTC ambitious digital first brands that, are committed to quality. And
by the way, very, very briefly, not everybody will know what DTC is.
So DTC means direct to consumer. Okay. So brands that sell direct to consumer instead of going through third-party retailers or wholesalers. And so we met those brands in Italy, in France, and Spain. And when we met them, we asked them a very simple question, which was, you're so committed to creating those beautiful products. Everything seems to align, and yet we don't know about you. There's a very hard time finding you online as well. So there was an issue and a problem of distribution and of connection between the people that wanted those products, myself, my co-founder, and a lot of men and women out there today, and those amazing brands that are being born every day can't connect with each other. And so we decided to create what is called in the business jargon a curated marketplace. So it's a platform that just like Amazon or Farfetch or Uber or Deliveroo doesn't own the inventory, but rather aggregates supply according to certain factors of quality for us, and presents that supply, so the brands, to our community of men and women, so that they can now hopefully discover these brands, shop these brands in a couple of clicks, and really have access to 250 of the most amazing brands in Europe.
Yeah, and 250. That's what I kind of in my research found. So this is 250 brands that you represent. Is that about the size you're thinking of, or are you going to be much bigger?
So it's a funny one. It's an interesting one as well, because at the very beginning I said we're never going to go above 50 brands, and that's not who we are, and we want to be curated. But as we went and discovered more of that industry, more of that world, there was also the realization in the discovery on our end that there's so many of those beautiful brands, and there's so many incredible categories spanning from homeware to kitchen to menswear to beauty as well, that more brands deserve to be in that limelight as well. And so for us, we've been careful to keep our curation very high, but obviously we're never going to be an Amazon, we're never going to be a Farfetch in terms of amount of supply, but the idea is that we can still scale and grow the amount of brands we have to potentially 500, 600 in the medium term. Again, we'd reflect that amount of suppliers with an improved experience on the website.
So you have grown hugely, right? Because when Mana and I met, that was in the year 2017, I think, when you guys were just launching, and you won CitySpark, which is our business plan competition, and then moved into the Launch Lab, which is our co-working space. And then of course they grew so quickly, and they had all these great products flying around the office where we were just like, we love you, but you're too big for us now. You need to move on. So I think there was that conversation at some point, right? So you moved on to your own offices, and how many team members do you have now? How big are you guys?
So when we were at the Launch Lab, it was myself and my co-founder Elliott, and we're huddled around the table. And today, so it's 2.5 years later now, 3 years I think almost to the day, we're 20. Including interns and remote people, but yes, we're 20 now, which is daunting but exciting. My job has transitioned where I was doing everything to some now like people's management job, where I really need to make sure that I provide the structure and the environment for our people to do the best work.
And I've seen on your website that you're also hiring right now. So maybe this is a shout out to yes, anybody who's listening. If you're looking for a job roughly in the marketing area, I think, have a look at their website. So
yes, and just on that, Caroline, quickly, we don't advertise internships at the moment, but there is always we're always very open to very talented individuals that want to come in and work for a quarter or two at Bombinate on very specific projects. So if you have any ideas or any talents that you think you can apply to the business, we're always open.
Okay, that's a fantastic offer. Thank you for emphasizing that. So of the many people who are listening, if you're interested, if you think you want to join a business like that, it's always worthwhile to reach out proactively, right?
Yes, yes.
And also Mana and Bombinate in general have remained really good friends of us, and are always back at our entrepreneurship events. So there are lots of opportunities to meet you guys in person, right? Okay, so back to the business. You're building this fantastic e-commerce business, and then the pandemic hits, right? Which I think has good sides and bad sides. And I've been kind of thinking about like the reason why I invited you, because I thought it would be really interesting, because I was thinking on the one hand, because you work with all of these really small craftsmen across actually the world. It isn't even limited to Europe mostly, and we all know that we all went into lockdown at different times, which probably would have resulted in disruptions to the supply chain and things like that. But on the other hand, I suppose you were probably also a really vital lifeline for a lot of these businesses to kind of actually still be able to operate. So how did that work out for you?
So it was a very scary time. I remember, it was the beginning of March, and obviously Italy was already going into lockdown, and it all felt quite far away. But a lot of our brands are based in Italy, and they were already feeling the pain just in terms of shops closing down. Some of them rely on retailers, on wholesale orders. So it was tough for them. It was tough for us in terms of the uncertainty of being such a small business. We just moved into new offices. We had to, some team members just started, and we hadn't even seen them face to face. So the month of March was, I wouldn't say rocky, but interesting in terms of the uncertainty that hit us. But then, as we all went, into quarantine, we all went back home. So I was back in Switzerland. The team members were again spread across Europe, and we're all working remotely. We started seeing that sales were really picking up, and that our brands were actually fulfilling these orders in an incredibly engaged way and very fast. And I think this can relate just to the fact that on the demand side, a lot of people were home. A lot of people were home for the first time for that long, and thankfully we had just opened a furniture section of the website, so what we call the Bombinate Casa. And I think a lot of people realize that they look at their walls, they look at the couch they're sitting on. They have to work from home now, and a lot of them wanted to improve their setting and their work from home environment. So we saw a lot of demand towards those categories. And then on the supply side, the brands, thankfully enough, are small enough that they don't use big warehouses. And actually, that was an advantage for us because big warehouses had to close down because of so many people working together. So Mr. Porter and Net-a-Porter couldn't ship. Matches Fashion, I think, managed. But basically, a lot of big retailers couldn't ship anymore because of that reason. And our brands were using DHL or FedEx to ship, and they could all ship. So at some point, we were even faster in terms of shipping times than Zara, than H&M in Spain, which was crazy, but a huge advantage. So from the month of March, I would say, to June, we saw incredible e-commerce tailwinds, and the UK has just published some research now in terms of the jump that the online retail sales made in those last couple of months. And it's true that we've made a jump of almost 5 years to 7 years in terms of of e-commerce adoption. So a lot of people that had never shopped before were forced to shop online. And I think also there was this element of, people weren't spending on holidays, they weren't spending on food, they weren't spending on anything else, and they were just at home. And so fortunately for us, a lot of that spend went to improving your home and improving your wardrobe.
And do you think that is just simply because of the situation, that people just found you because they were looking for stuff online, or did you actually proactively reach out? Because I know that normally you obviously do a lot of online marketing. You're really big on Instagram, for example. But I suppose the person who's never shopped online is also not the person you're going to find on Instagram, most likely. And I know that often you actually try to still do things in a brick and mortar way. So you've had a few really cool pop-up events and pop-up stores in London, which all, of course, didn't happen. So did you just benefit from the situation? Or did you actually proactively try and capitalize on the situation from a marketing perspective?
We did, obviously, when we really felt that we were benefiting from the situation, we really went, head down doubled down on our marketing efforts. We doubled down on our hiring efforts because, it's in these moments that that one can really, take off, not only from the competition, but also from just the whole online space. So it was really an opportunity for us to grow much faster than we had planned. And finally, it was also, I think at that time what happened is that a lot of people seeing or thinking that the world was to some extent collapsing, also directed a lot of their attention to sustainability, to high quality items, to supporting small brand, local brands. So there was a big push around the month of April to supporting your local brands because they were struggling a lot. And so we were really crafting marketing campaigns around supporting Italian brands as if you were Italian, Spanish brands if you were Spanish. So we adapted our marketing campaigns to the situation. But it's true that looking at how much we've grown so far, that the brick and mortar strategy doesn't seem irrelevant at all, because I think the future of Bombinate will be omni-channel, in that we will have a physical presence. But it's just the ability to not touch products, the ability to not touch boxes, to not be into supply chain or logistics is an incredible advantage at the end of the day. And that was reflected by the fact that, like I said, the 10 of us at the time, or 15, were spread across Europe with our computers, and the business was booming. And so I think, being not tied to what I call the atoms world was beneficial, and it's, I think, a warning sign as well for us to be careful when we want to go into that world again, to make sure that that there's no so much risk involved with it.
Okay. That makes actually a lot of sense, and it's glad to hear of businesses that actually could capitalize or benefit from the situation, but in a way that actually helps other businesses. We do have a bunch of questions coming in, so I'm going to move on to those already, because these 30 minutes always go past super quickly. We have a question from Alex Elkins, who you will know. So Alex runs actually, he runs the City Launch Lab, amongst other things, at the business school. He asked, first of all, when are you coming to pick up your post? Which I think is more of a joke. But he also asked, is like, which brands really inspire you? And he said, I bet you mentioned Elliott denim.
Yes,
so
we know them, and everyone should check them out, especially the founder of Elliott Denim, which is David Hyatt, who puts out a lot of interesting content on Twitter, and I believe he has a newsletter and a YouTube page, the whole shebang. But in terms of the brands that inspire us, we look at, I think, and that comes back to Alex's first question as well, which is interesting. As a marketplace, as a platform, we have to be careful that we don't overshadow our brands, because we have almost an umbrella brand in the sense that we support and elevate, 250 other brands. So when we've decided to really work on the Bombinate brand, we're really taking a direction that is welcoming, so that can support other brands in that ecosystem, but that still has a very defined aesthetic and a look, because we're not, again, Amazon, in which we want to please everyone. We're a curated marketplace, and as such, we need to be defined and have a defined aesthetic. And so some of the brands that inspire us are, marketplaces that have, been successful in the past and today. So there's a marketplace in the US called HipCamp, which is interesting. It's quite niche, they're the Airbnb of camping. And they've become huge, obviously, now as well with the situation. And then in terms of more normal brands, we really look at brands that have managed to, create a community, a very strong community around their brand, and a community that doesn't necessarily relate to the attributes of a product, but rather to the qualities and the values of the brand, or what the brand tries to transmit. And so, we're looking at brands such as Rafa in the cycling space, Tracksmith in the running space, which is very interesting. We're looking at brands, some of our brands that are doing incredibly well. A swimwear brand called Ripa from Italy has managed to recapture, this idea of what nostalgic Italy would have been in the 50s as a swimwear brand. So that's very interesting. And so to us, there's a lot of inspiration from everywhere in the industry, but it's true that to be innovative and to potentially be one of the defining e-commerce companies of the next decade, we'll have to make sure that we create our own identity that is very strong and can live on its own.
So I have a follow-up question here, which I think fits quite well from Jess, and we have lots of questions coming in, so we have to keep the answers slightly shorter, Mana, if I can ask you to, because we're running out of time. Jess, let me ask, how did you successfully connect with these small brands and enable them to trust you as a startup business? So why would they actually indeed, you have these guys coming and saying, hey, we want to do this, why would they trust you?
So very interesting, and it's always the problem with marketplaces is solving the chicken or the egg problem. So you have to go to one side of the marketplace to then attract the other, to then attract more of the other. And so for us, what we did was to really identify the pain point that these suppliers had, create a proposal. So we had a PDF at the time. It was very bootstrapped, and we went to these brands at fairs. Like I said, we met them face to face. And showed them what we had designed, the plans, what they would do, the community we would create. And again, we had a lot of no's. Most of them, I think the conversion rate was less than 10%. But we had enough yeses to really kickstart the marketplace flywheel. So it's, again, it's about crafting a proposal that talks to them and their pain point, understands what they're trying to do, and then making sure that you understand that it's a work in progress and that the marketplace flywheel needs to start turning slowly before it can accelerate.
Again, a related question to that. Sorry, they move because we get so many. Somebody asked about the fact that you actually have quite a lot of different product categories on there now, and whether that is a better way to go than being more niche. So how do you see yourself? Because
so very interesting.
It's this tension, right?
Yeah, it's a tension that we're very, very aware of. It's one that we don't want to be known to be category specific. It's true that we started only with menswear and then expanded to furniture. What we think ourselves of is that we want to be known for a certain value, which we call quality lifestyle. So our tagline is we help men and women transition to a quality lifestyle, a new way of consumption, an elevated way of consumption where you support small, independent, local founders that are committed to quality. So our timelessness, I think, is in the curation, and that's where we always want to be known for, agnostic of any category. But I understand that coming onto the website today, it can be overwhelming. It can seem like there's a lot, and just to answer that question, the website was designed when we had 60 brands, and now we have 250. So we're long overdue a new design, a new website to really reflect these new ambitions and the road we've traveled so far.
Somebody else asked on here, why did you decide to focus on menswear, which indeed isn't the case anymore, right? But I do remember when you started out, it was very much a menswear proposition. So why did you start from that, and why didn't you stick to it? I guess it's another question, right?
So menswear was just because we're solving a need for ourselves in the sense that we felt the need when we were in that car traveling, that there wasn't anywhere where we would find the clothes, the accessories that we wanted as men. And so it was really to solve a need we had. And it was logical as well when we spoke to brands, when we curated those brands at the beginning, that we knew how to select them. And then again, like I said, the expansion, the category expansion was very opportunistic at the time. And thankfully we did it. Opportunistic in the way that we identified a lot of brands that fit our criteria, and there was an opportunity for us to onboard them quite quickly and to launch a new category very quickly. The furniture category has much better unit economics for Bombinate than the menswear category because of the returns that menswear have, because of the cancellations. So when you look at furniture, for us it's almost the propeller, the fuel that allows Bombinate to really thrive today.
Okay, thank you. Somebody else asked about whether you only do European brands, and I think the answer to that is no, right? You focus on the European presence, but you're also open to other.
So the idea was to always focus on European-made brands that are local, but we've been a bit more flexible now with welcoming brands that are also that share the same values that we have, but that are also, potentially made in the Far East or made in the US or in South America. The reason being is that, this idea of that made in Europe is necessarily better than made anywhere else. I think predates the digital world, is maybe an idea that was relevant in the 2000s. But when you look at some of the workshops and the ateliers in India, for example, or even in China, they're much better at producing high quality products than some in Europe. So that's not a rule, but I think, as a business that's looking toward the 2020s, I think we have to have open eyes to those ateliers, those skill sets, those artisans in those countries as well.
Another question, which I think a lot of our audience will be interested in, is how did you manage to balance working on your startup while also studying? And I suppose a follow-up question is like, how was the transition like from being a student to running your business?
Yeah, so to be very honest, I did my final year project on that idea. On the thesis was whether there was space in the industry for a player like Bombinate. We didn't actively work on it during university. We did research, we were having meetings. It wasn't a full-time job then, so the balancing act was easier. And then the transition, I think, was amazing in the sense that, it's incredibly exciting to go out there and scary at the same time to go out there to pitch a proposition that doesn't exist, that doesn't necessarily make sense at the time, where there's a lot of doubt. So I think we learned a lot, myself and my co-founder, about ourselves, about, our motivation, about how you stay motivated in those times during that transition. So, there's absolutely no regret transitioning. What I would say what I would do differently is I'd make sure that, I'd go out to market with a bit more experience, a better product. And so I think there's less patience today from consumers for MVPs. So the idea of a minimum viable product, I think, is less exciting today than it was before. So it's about making sure that you go out to market with the best possible product.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. I think we're slowly getting to the end of it. Since I'm here as the Associate Dean for Entrepreneurship, can you say anything about whether or not our entrepreneurship provision, the stuff that Alex and I do at the business school, is useful at all?
Yes,
for starting?
Yes, definitely. I mean, the support we had at the launch lab was incredible. We met some of the judges at CitySpark, have become friends, and have, led to some introductions that have enabled us to raise some money. So, it's always a chain of events. And I think, CitySpark or the launch lab sparked some of those events in those chains. So I think we wouldn't be here without Alex's great jokes and welcoming attitude, and Caroline, your support as well. So definitely, I think there's opportunities for the entrepreneurship course you reflect, what entrepreneurship looks like today. But again, I haven't looked at the curriculum now, so I have no idea how it looks like.
There actually is now an entrepreneurship track, an innovation and entrepreneurship track when you study business management, which I think didn't exist when you were with us. And also for those of you who are actually our students, and I think a lot of you in the audience are, do watch out for a startup camp, which is going to happen in October. So you can hear much more about the kinds of things that we offer. And we are out of time. Mana, it was really lovely to see you again. I'm glad you're back in the office. Let's all hope we're going to have a kind of normal few months coming up. But yeah, we're really happy to keep seeing your progress and your success. And obviously we'll keep in touch. And for all of you who would like to potentially, I don't know, find out more about Bombinate, you think you're their ideal team member and they just don't know it, do find Mana online. It's quite easy to find him. And we will see you hopefully again next week at the next Food for Thought webinar. And yeah, thanks again, Mana. It's great to see you.
Thank you for having me, Caroline.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.